taking notes. Ask Maddie. Can you borrow a pen?
Yeah, it's like blended to me so mean.
I have
Okay. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the parable of the rich fool. Okay? And so let me begin with this. Can we go to the next slide for me, Joshua? Okay. And I don't know if you guys take history class, but if you guys do, you guys might know who he is. Alexander the Great. Have you ever heard of him before? Alexander the Great? Alright, that's cool. Not many people, okay. That's fine. So Alexander the Great, he was, I guess, a king in a land called Macedonia, which was located in Greece, okay? And what he was famous for is that he was famous because he conquered such a great land that expanded all the way from Greece all the way to India. So if you look at here, from Greece all the way to India, border of India. So just imagine how long the distance is. Can anybody guess? Anybody want to guess how long that distance is? Yeah.
like 1,000 miles.
Nah, more than that. More than 1,000. More than 1,000. Yes.
60,000.
Okay, 60,000 way too much. I don't even know if the Earth is 60,000 miles. Yes. 5,000? A little bit less. A little bit less. Yes. 3,000. Good guess. Okay. So it's approximately 3,000 miles. Okay. If you put that in the terms of the United States, if you start from Philadelphia and you go travel 3,000 miles, guess where you're gonna end up?
China.
No, China's too much. Okay. You're gonna end up. You're gonna end up in Anchorage, Alaska. You guys know where Alaska is? Alaska is up there somewhere, right? And so it's a long distance. Okay, it's very long distance. And I don't know if you guys have flown coast to coast before. I've done many times because my home is in LA. So sometimes I go from Philadelphia to LA back to Philadelphia. And that one trip from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, it takes about 5 hours on the plane. On the plane, okay? Back then, did they have airplanes?
Yeah.
No, they didn't. Okay, during the time of Alexander the Great, they did not have airplanes. Okay. Did they have cars? No, they didn't have cars. Cars would have taken maybe like 2 weeks, but they didn't even have cars. How did they travel back then?
Horses.
Horses or by walking, right? So just imagine how long of a trip 3,000 miles gonna take you. Can you imagine that? A 6-hour plane ride, 2 weeks of driving, that's probably gonna take you at least a couple months to go all that distance, maybe years. Okay, who knows? But the point is this. Even though he was so successful, even though he was so famous as a general and he conquered such a big land, Alexander, he didn't get to enjoy the land that he conquered. After he conquered all that land, he died. Okay? He immediately died, and afterwards, people had no idea what to do. Right? So what happened was this. After Alexander's death, his whole empire, it collapsed. And all the generals that fought with Alexander, they ended up fighting against each other, and the empire divided into 4 parts. So much for a kingdom, right? So much for Alexander's kingdom. It divided up right after he died. You see, the only kingdom that's going to remain is whose kingdom? God's kingdom, right? Christ's kingdom. And in today's passage, it begins with the topic of that. It begins with the topic of dividing inheritance. What is an inheritance? That's Timmy.
Something you receive from your parents.
Yes, if your parents are about to die, they're going to give you some inheritance, okay? So I don't know if many of you guys are going to missions, but for our church, if you go to missions, you write a will, okay? And when you write a will, what you're saying is, okay, after I die, maybe a nice letter, right? Maybe a nice letter to your family telling, oh, Mom, if I die, I'm going to miss you. Oh, Dad, I'm going to miss you, right? And then inheritance would be like what you're going to leave behind with the people after you die. So for me, I have a nice laptop. I have a apartment, and then I'll tell because I live with Pastor Paul. You guys know Pastor Paul, right? I'll tell him you can keep the whole room to yourself now if I die, right? That'll be inheritance that I'll give to him, okay? And so today's passage it begins with the talking about inheritance. Let's go to the next slide. It begins with inheritance, and somebody in the crowd asks Jesus. He says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." See, this man, he was concerned with what he can have on this earth. He was concerned about his inheritance and about money, about land, about things that he can own. And it comes at a very funny time because Jesus is like passionately talking about like trusting in Jesus if persecutions come, that they have to remain faithful and they have to remain strong when people hate on them because they believe in Jesus Christ and because they are disciples and followers of Jesus. And then somebody totally random, just all of a sudden pops up a question and says, Jesus, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Okay? And this guy's a fool. This guy's a fool. Why is he a fool? Because Jesus is talking about the kingdom of God. Jesus is talking about how to follow Jesus and how to have great treasures in heaven. But this man doesn't care about that. He cares about what he can have on this earth. And so this random person asks and tells Jesus to tell his brother to divide the inheritance with him. And how does Jesus respond? Let's go to the next slide. Jesus says this. Jesus says, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? And he says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Okay? Jesus knew right through the man's heart. The man was greedy. The man was coveting. You guys know the 10th commandment? What does the 10th commandment say? Do not
Steal.
No, not do not steal. Okay? Yes, Daniel.
Do not be jealous of what other people have.
Sure, do not be jealous of what others have, or another way would be do not covet. Covet is that word. Coveting is like this. You see this picture? The girl has 2 dolls, and the other girl's like, man, I'm jealous. I want one of her dolls, right? That's what coveting is, okay? And Jesus knew that the person that was asking the question, divide the inheritance, tell my brother to divide the inheritance, he knew that this person was coveting all of the inheritance. And so let's talk about covetousness, being jealous of what others have. When I was young, and I'm sure some of you guys can relate with me with this, okay? And I was a very covetous man, okay? And to some degree, I'm pretty sure I still can get covetous, okay? When I was in junior high, for some of you guys are in 5th grade, and like coming fall, you guys are all moving up to junior high, okay? And what I'm seeing in the trend within the junior high right now is everybody has what? Everybody has a cell phone. Anybody get jealous of your junior high brother or sister having a phone? Oh, your brother doesn't have a phone? Alright, here we go. See? So you guys get jealous because your older siblings have a phone, right? When I was in junior high, I was jealous too. I was like, man, these guys have nice... Back then we didn't have smartphones, we had flip phones. You guys know what those are? Flip phones? Flip phones are... No, not Blackberries. Blackberries are for like businessmen. But flip phones are... You have to flip it open. Okay, that's why it's called flip phones. Yes, he hates those phones. Alright. Alright, it was good. But back then it was good, okay? Back then it was good. I wanted to be able to have a phone so I could like text my friends, right? You know, text my friends and just call people whenever I want to. You know, not having to use the phone at home. That's kind of lame, right? And so all my friends had it, so I was jealous. And then what happened was I got into high school. And then when I got into high school, I began to covet other people because they were driving cars around, okay? I had a driving license when I was in high school, but then I didn't have a car, okay? So I would have to take school bus around. But then I had friends who drove cars. I was like jealous of them. I was like, dang, I wish I had a car. So I won't have to take a stinking school bus. The school bus sucks, you know? It like spews out nasty gas, right? And school bus is like kind of, the seats are not nice, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish I had a car, okay? And so I remember I was a very covetous guy, okay? And I wish, my dad's a pastor, and pastors don't get paid that well, so I was really jealous. I was like, man, I wish my dad wasn't a pastor, and my dad was rich, so I could, have all this stuff like my other friends have, okay? And let me ask you guys, what do you guys covet? What are you guys jealous? What do you guys get jealous of these days? Beyblade? Yeah, you guys don't play with Beyblade. You guys play with, yeah, what do you get jealous of? Andy? Why? Because he's the oldest? Alright. Because he has all the nice clothes? Alright, he sees you too. Nathan sees you. Alright? So we covet. I'm sure you guys get greedy. When another friend has slimes, you kind of want that slime. Or when another friend does jujitsu, you want to do jujitsu. Or when your other friend does When your other friends are wearing that nice blue t-shirt and they're dancing up there, you're thinking to yourself, man, I wish I'm up there. I'm not good enough at dancing, right? Maybe you're thinking that to yourself, okay? But what does coveting show, okay? Why does Jesus and the Bible teach us not to covet, to not get jealous? Because coveting is not good. Because it shows us that we are not content. We are not happy with what God has given to us. Our happiness is found in what? If we covet, our happiness is found in what? In the other people's possessions, their things, the things that they have. You get jealous of that. So you want that. You're not happy with God, God has given you, and you'll never be happy until you get that. That's coveting. And that is sinful in God's eyes. Because you are not happy with what God has given to you. Because you are not happy. And you want your happiness to be found not in God, but in other earthly things. It's a trick that we fall into. It's a sin that we can fall into. And so Jesus goes on and he begins to teach a parable to the crowd that is around him. Let's go to the next slide, please. And he tells this parable. It's a parable about a wealthy man, right? It's a man, and it says this. He begins by saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest, okay? So this guy was a farmer, and he was a faithful farmer. He worked hard, and that year, his land, his ground produced a lot of crops. And so he had a lot of crops, and as a farmer, if you have a lot of crops, you could sell it, you could save it up, you could do all these different things, right? And in the time of Israel, I want you guys to remember this, okay? Let's think about Israel. What kind of land is Israel? Dry land, probably not very good for farming. And so for you to be a farmer in the land of Israel, dry land like Israel, and to own land, you must have been pretty rich. And so for the Jews, as they hear the story, this is what they're thinking. This man's really rich. He has land and he has crops. And not only does he have crops, but what does he also have? Let's go to, he's thinking to himself, I have so many crops, what am I going to do? And then let's go to the next slide, please. And the next part of the story, Jesus tells us this, right? The man's thinking to himself, I have so much crops, what am I going to do? And he says, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear down my barns, and I'm going to build bigger ones, and I will store all my surplus grains there. And after I save it all up, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and enjoy myself. It says, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. He's going to enjoy his life afterwards. He has all these crops, all these grains, all these food that he could sell, that he could eat for himself, and he's happy with that, right? And I want you to think of this, okay? This is a picture of what the world teaches us now. This is what our world teaches us. It teaches us, you know what? Work hard, save up the money, be rich, have all you can have, right? I can think of like the athletes, famous athletes that you guys know. Those guys make bank, right? Those guys make a lot of money. And they just spend the rest of their life after their playing career is over, they just spend it all just having fun and just relaxing, going to Bahamas out of nowhere, or going to nice places, going on a cruise, and enjoying their life, right? I can think of rich people like, Steve Jobs, he died, but other rich people, there are wealthy people around the world. And they made it far, right? And they're successful in the eyes of this world. Everybody covets what they have. So much money, so much resting time, so much free time, so much enjoyment in their old age. And this is the message that this world gives to us. It teaches us, study hard, and then what's going to happen if you study hard?
Good grades.
You get good grades, and then what? You go to good college, and then you do what?
Good job.
Get a good job, and then do what? Get rich, and then retire, and then what? After you retire, what?
Die.
Well, yes, die, but then after you retire, enjoy your life.
Medicine.
That's exactly this man's life. You guys see that? He says, I've worked hard. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to retire, and I'm going to enjoy my life. Right? And let me give you an illustration that I found. Let's go to the next slide. So This is a really famous pastor. His name is John Piper. When you guys get older, I want you guys to listen to his sermons because it's really powerful and it's really impactful. Okay? And this was year 2000. Anybody born in the year of 2000? No, you guys are all after 2000, right?
Yeah.
How old are you, Nathan? 2007? You were born 2007?
Yeah.
7 years after.
I'm 11
You were born
years old.
7 years after this sermon,
I'm
okay?
11 years
And
old.
so this pastor by the name of John Piper, he was preaching to a crowd of maybe about like 40,000 people, okay? And his message, it caused a great revival throughout the United States, and it changed a lot of people's lives who are thinking about their careers and what they're going to do in their future. And he began with this. He began saying, don't waste your life. Don't waste your life. And he gave an example of 2 types of people. So listen carefully, 2 types of people. And the first types of people that he told us, he told the crowd was this. He spoke of 2 80-year-old women by the name of Ruby Eliason and Laura Edwards. Okay, these 2 80-year-old women, they were serving God in Cameroon, and they were trying to tell others about Jesus Christ. But then what happened was, as they are doing that in Cameroon, as they're going around sharing about Jesus Christ, what happened was they were driving around and the car's brake, the brake pedal broke down and they went over a cliff and they ended up dying. Okay, they ended up getting killed.
It's a true story.
Yes, it's a true story. And he asked the crowd, is this tragedy? What do you guys think? Is this a tragedy? Is it a tragedy that they died while sharing the gospel? Is that a tragedy? Maybe in the world's eyes it is tragedy, but in God's eyes, is that tragedy? No, it's not tragedy. In God's eyes, it's glorious, right? It's glorious because these 2 women, they died sacrificing and suffering for the sake of the gospel. It's not tragedy. Don't think of that as tragedy. Somebody dying for gospel is not tragedy, okay? On the other hand, Pastor Piper, he explained what true tragedy is. Listen to this. He opened to, I don't know if you guys know, Reader's Digest. It's a magazine. And from the Reader's Digest story, he gave an example of one couple, right? One couple. Their names are Bob and Penny, okay? Bob and Penny, they are nearing the age of 60 years old. They're almost turning 60. And they had an early retirement. Yes. Hurry, be quick. They had an early retirement, and they were living in Florida after they retired, okay? And they had a nice cruise, enjoying the nice beach weather, and they're collecting seashells, okay? They're collecting seashells, okay? And Pastor Piper said this. Pastor Piper said, this is tragedy. Why does he say that? What do you think? Why is this tragedy? Why is that tragedy? For you to retire and enjoy your life for the rest of your life because you worked hard for the money you made and you can live free collecting seashells and going on cruises. Why is that tragedy? Yes?
It's a tragedy because after you retire, you should actually praise God and thank him for what he has given you.
Yeah, I like that answer. Thank you. Allison, right? I like that. Thank you. Yeah, he said it was a tragedy because, look, after you retire, you're like about 60 years old, 70 years old. How many more years you got left to live? Maybe 10, maybe 20 years. Yeah, you're going to have maybe nice cars, nice house, a nice job, nice family, nice retirement. But just imagine, after you die, after your retirement, after you die, you're going to stand before God. Look, everybody listen up. You're all going to stand before God. Okay? God is judge, and you're going to stand before Him. What are you going to tell God? For Bob and Penny, what are they going to tell God? They're going to say, oh, God, yeah, about my life. I worked hard. Yeah, I got a nice cruise ship in Florida. I was collecting seashells. Yeah, that's my life. What's God going to say? God's going to look at that and say, you fool. God's going to say, you fool. You lived your life for that? I gave you your life and you lived for that. Right? God's going to say that. Let's go to the next slide. And that's what we see in today's passage. Look at it. God said to the man, the rich fool, the man who said, look, I'm going to make a barn, a bigger barn, and I'm going to store all my crops there. This is how God responds. And he said he's going to enjoy his life afterwards, and this is what God says. You fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. And who will get what you have prepared for yourself? You guys get that? He was going to finally enjoy his life, working hard, making a name, making fame, making money for himself. And God tells him this. God says, you are a fool. I'm about to take your life tonight. You're not going to enjoy anything that you have worked so hard for. And this man, this rich man, he's going to stand before God. And what is he going to have to say? He's got nothing to say. And so, let me make my point here, okay? Okay, you guys are young. You guys are young. You guys are not in your 60s and 70s going into retirement. But you guys are like 10, 11 years old. And you guys have 89 more years to live, probably, right?
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? That's my question for you today. What are you going to do with your life? You know, death is coming. Everybody is going to die, okay? You guys are young. It might not feel real. But just go to some funerals and it's going to come real to you. When my grandma passed away and I went to her funeral, I felt like death is not something too far away. It's going to come quickly. It's going to come quickly. And death will come and you're going to have to stand before God. You're going to have to stand before the great judge. And you're going to have to give him an account of your life. You're going to have to tell him what you've done with your life. And what are you going to boast about? What are you going to say to him at that moment? Right? And as Pastor Piper said, I hope that in the presence of God, in the face of God, you don't tell a story where you wasted your life away. Okay? How can we waste our life away? If we don't live a life centered in the gospel, if we don't live a life that glorifies God, if we don't live a life really loving God, loving church, sharing the gospel to others, right? That is a life that you've wasted away. Right? Don't live for yourself like this rich man did. He completely wasted his life. He worked for himself and he wanted to enjoy his life because he worked hard for himself. But at the end of the day, he stood before God. There was nothing that he could say. Don't make legacy for yourself. Make a legacy for God. Okay? Make a name for God. And I think from our discipleship class, we watched the movie Coco. Okay? How many of you guys watched the movie Coco before? Okay? That's cool. All right? So Coco is a movie about leaving a legacy, leaving a name for yourself if you watch it, right? Because there are two characters. There's two characters. If you guys know Dela Cruz is the huge dude, right? Dela Cruz is a huge dude. And Hector, right? Hector? I don't know how to say it in Spanish well. Hector, right? Hector is a skinny guy, right? Hector is a guy that everybody basically had forgotten about, right? And Dela Cruz was a name that was remembered. Everybody remembered Dela Cruz because he was the famous musician. But what happens? You realize in the movie that Dela Cruz actually stole from Hector's songs that he's written, and Dela Cruz was actually a bad guy, right?
He killed Hector.
Yes, he killed Hector. Yes, he did kill Hector in the real life, right? And so what you realize in the story is this, right? Dela Cruz tried to make a name for himself. He tried to leave a legacy for himself, but at the end of the day, he did it in bad ways. He did it in selfish ways. And that legacy wouldn't last. Right? And so, as we finish, I want you guys to think about this. What can I do to leave a legacy that glorifies God? What can I do to do that? As you guys come to church, are you guys going to be remembered as the kid who comes to church, brings games, and play games 24/7? You guys want to be remembered as that guy? Or do you guys want to be remembered as that guy who comes to church, and all you do is just fool around, mess around during worship, never listen to what the pastor has to say, go back home, and your life isn't changed. Even after listening to the Bible, even after going to Bible studies, your life hasn't changed completely at all. Or are you going to be that guy who comes to church and really loves God, really worships God with everything that you have? You're going to be that guy that comes to church, right? Really serving the church, really loving God. Are you going to be that guy who's going to be known by God because you went out and shared the gospel, just as these two 80-year-old women did, Are you going to be known as that person? Going around and sharing the gospel to people, making the name of Jesus Christ known. Are you going to be that person? Right? And I want to end with this. I want to end with this quote. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, last slide. All right. Nathan, can you read that for me? All right. I think this is a good quote to end today's sermon. Okay? I think it's a great quote to end today's sermon. Look, guys. What you do in your life for yourself, for your name, is not going to last. It's going to all fade away. People are going to forget you. Maybe in 50 years, 60 years after you die, people are going to forget about you. But this is what's going to last. If you do something for Christ, if you live your life for Jesus Christ, that's what's going to last. Because God will remember, and God is eternal. So with that said, I want us to close us in time of prayer. I want you guys to have a short time of reflection. Okay? Have a time of reflection. Pray and ask God, Lord,